Rebel Devs Podcast, a show that challenges conventional thinking in the tech industry. Each episode features conversations with solutionists who have taken unconventional approaches to problem solving, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in their respective fields. Join the devolution.
Hey everybody, this is Tom with Rebel Devs, and I'm here today with Anthony Cusimano from ObjectFirst. We talked all about great ObjectFirst stuff, and we'll pay the bills later this time, because now we're just going to have some fun. So we're kicking back, and I know none of you can see the room that Anthony's standing in, but this is, I always call it my Mr. Rogers moment. So Mr. Rogers would always talk about having a fish. If you didn't know this story, it's very heartwarming. And one little girl writes in and she can't see, and she's like, Mr. Rogers, I'm very concerned. Are you feeding the fish? And so Fred Rogers, from that point forever, you know, like he was on TV 150 years. So for the next 75 years, every day he's like, and now I'm going and feeding the fish. So this little girl knew. So you can't see what I'm seeing. So right now, this is my poor attempt to be heartwarming like Mr. Rogers. So half the audience is like, oh, the other half is like, Tom, you're a jerk. What are you doing? Like, did you just try to be Mr. Rogers? No, ladies and gentlemen, I am not Mr. Rogers and do not try to be. But I'm looking at a really cool room with, I think, tons of anime, if I had to guess. So I'm either cool for knowing that, or I'm a fool because it is not anime and it's something else. So break it away. What am I looking at here, Anthony?
It's a lot. I just want to, real quick, before I talk about what's behind me, my mom was really good friends with Mr. Rogers and his wife, which is just funny.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she got to do a lot of interviews and stuff with them when they were alive, and they're wonderful people. So I love that she went there. That was cool for me. So the room behind me, it's a lot of anime. It's a lot of weird music and video games. I'm a huge nerd, and I grew up in the 90s, and I've never thrown anything away. So I've got lots of retro games. I got lots of anime posters. I'm a huge fan of like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and weird muscle men type things like He-Man. So I've just kept it all, and I put it all on display in my background and then cover it all up with a virtual filter so no one can see it. But yeah, I live in my perpetual man-child cave, and I work here too. So it's a pretty cool setup.
So I heard anime. I'm too old because I was born in the late 70s and grew up 80s, and like my high school and college years were the 90s, right? So I heard a whole bunch of that. Anime wasn't cool and hip at that time, though. Like 4 kids looked at it in school. I went, but I heard He-Man. So we got to break He-Man down a little bit. Are we talking like the film? Is it Film Nation or whatnot? Like the original 80s, or because I know there were like Kevin Smith derivatives and stuff, and I love Kevin Smith. Which He-Man are you?
No, I love the Kevin Smith He-Man. I love it. I have like behind me, over where I'm pointing that no one can see, I have a shelf full of Kevin Smith He-Man figures that I've obsessed over. But I grew up with the Filmation show. It was on reruns. I think it was like Cartoon Network. I'd be at my grandparents' house because they were the only ones with cable. And He-Man would be on. I'm just like, this guy's so cool. I love it. And I just love the whole, barbarian vibe and aesthetic. Something about that world and like the combination of like, it's very, Conan meets cyberpunk meets, Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it's weird. It's such a weird vibe, and I love it, and I still do. And that's why I was so happy Kevin Smith brought it back. I was like, this is He-Man on steroids, which is funny because, he's huge, so he didn't need him, but I love it.
He-Man does not endorse steroids. We can all say that.
Sword of Power gets him there,
Have you ever watched, I think on Netflix, The Toys That Made Us, and they actually had a series on He-Man? Like, I love it because it always is along these lines of like, did you know that there were these people that wanted to make toys and they wanted to make money, so they put cartoons before innocent kids. And to save the day, they said, don't do drugs, go to school, so they could sell you toys. And they're like, egad evil. And I'm like, guys, my old man grew up in the late 50s and 60s, and G.I. Joe was back. Like, it's since the beginning of time over here. How can you vilify, He-Man like that. Like, don't take that away. But I remember coming home from school and we'd run home to watch He-Man and we'd play He-Man, and it was huge for like 2 years. And we bought He-Man toys and everything. And then the weirdest movie ever came out, which was Masters of the Universe. So where are you? Do you love it or hate it? That old Dolph Lundgren movie.
I mean, I don't think I liked it as a kid. Maybe I did. I couldn't tell you if I loved it. It wasn't on like the repeat watch list as a youngin'. But as an adult, I have learned, because I was born in 89, sorry. I have learned that I missed the greatest decade, which was like the 80s. And I wish I could have been a child of the 80s, because all the coolest stuff, movies, music, everything came out in those 10 years. And I love 80s trash, like 80s horror, 80s action, anything. You can just throw it my way. I will watch it endlessly, and it's the best. So as an adult, I think it's great, but I don't know if it's actually good or if I'm just obsessed with the level of creativity and sort of just imagination that came out of that decade.
Well, I love documentaries. I watched one on Canon Studios, which were the guys that made He-Man. And basically, they were a Ponzi scheme for a while. They were just robbing anything, getting contracts. And, hopefully we're not getting sued by a defunct organization right now. But so what I'm telling them all is I loved this movie kind of as a kid, but I was really disappointed because watching those cartoons, I went in and I was like, yes. And like, it really didn't correlate to the toy line or the show at all. And you were like, how does that become this? But you know what? Dolph Lundgren had been, I think, Rocky IV by that point. So I was like, yeah, Dolph Lundgren. And the guy, Frank, I can never say his last name, playing Skeletor, like, learning he took the role because, like, I think his kids were into He-Man. So it's like, I'm going to be Skeletor. And it's just like looking at the whole thing. So I go back and watch it and I'm like, it's totally like campy and different. And I'm like, I guess if you didn't know the toy, you might enjoy it. But if you were like playing with these cartoon things and toys all the day, you were just like, where's the disconnect here? When I went to the DuckTales movie, it was the DuckTales cartoon on the big screen. When I saw He-Man, I was like, what? Like, I don't get this, man. Like, how weird is that? So He-Man anime.
There's a different universe where Marvel's not popular and He-Man is, and then that would just be the really cool multiverse throwback thing they would do. Bring Dolph, new one, and that's the world I wish I lived in. But we got the one we're in, so I'll deal with it. I'll take my superhero movies, I guess.
Oh, yeah. And, if Jonah was on the podcast, he's actually out at a Texas Rangers game, living life in a suite, ditching us to go play ball and meet with customers and vendors. So God bless him. But he is all into anime, and, he grew up with it all. And, the listeners know I'm dad. So we're father-son vanguards. We work together. We've been in the same companies, parallel companies and whatnot. And now he spends a lot of his time with Cyber Fortress, but we do this podcast together normally. And like, he would be about every character back there. Like, what's cool about it, I'll share this story, is for his high school graduation, we were like, man, where do you want to go? And he's like, Japan. And we're like, okay. See, you're like, yes. But see, okay, here's dad brain. Dad brain is like, we're going to Kyoto, to the Emperor's Palace. We're going to walk through history. We're going to learn all. We're like, why do you want to go to Japan? And he's like, there's this really rare electronics store in the middle of downtown Tokyo. And it's like 3 stories and an old house. And they have like every type of video game imaginable. And he's like, you can get the Pokemon that are in Japan. And we're like, am I really going to pay for this really expensive trip to Japan just to go there? Well, he convinced us to do it. We went to the store. It was amazing. And then actually being immersed into Japanese culture, realizing firsthand what anime is to them, I understand it a little bit more. I still don't get into it so much, but, I will say he would have been all over this conversation by every stretch of the word. So you got the lesser of the maze for your What Makes Anthony segment in here. So
I'm insanely jealous. Japan has been on the bucket list. I've wanted to go to the Akihabara district, which I'm assuming is where you went.
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
It is such a cool place, cool culture. I'm super into film and movies. And one thing I've learned about sort of Eastern movies versus Western and just storytelling in general is, out here, there's always a hero, a villain, and there's the hero's journey. every movie's going to end with, the bad guy losing, or it's going to be a tragedy and the good guy will die, but so will the bad guy. And like out there in the East, the way they tell stories is just different. You never know what you're going to get. And I think that's why I became such a huge fan of anime, especially as an adult, is they're telling stories that you just don't hear over here. And it's very much a part of their culture. Like they're influenced by completely different things than we are. And it leads them to kind of create these worlds and fantasies that we just don't have. And I'm all over it.
Well, something that some people know and they're actually quite shocked at is I'm a former Methodist minister. So I grew up in technology in the heyday of the 80s, as you would say, in IBM country, and tinkering with computers, and became good at them. And I went to college, and you could either learn how to program them, which is not the world I live in. Like, yes, I can bash script, I can batch script, I can write basic programs in some languages, but really what I can do in 500 lines of code, anybody with talent would be like, that's 2 lines with a loop, dude. And I'm like, whatever. So I go into tech, I work in there, and I get a business degree, and I work kind of as a BA for years and years and years in tech and become IT. Like when IT is not a thing. And on a sideline, I'm always having this call to ministry. I go into ministry and whatnot, and then I come back through. And one of the things that I've learned through my seminary journey was exactly what you're saying, the difference between Eastern and Western. Even when we talk about Christianity, Judaism, and these sorts of things, when we look at the Americanized version or even the European version, I call it, we have very equational thinking. This plus this equals this, right?
Exactly.
And when we realize a lot of these religions that we practice today are actually these Eastern religions, it's a different journey. It's spiritual. There is no equational based way back to salvation. And when you're talking about the storytelling, one of my favorite movies, and because I took Japanese literature in high school, it was a prerequisite to graduate early, a class I never chose, but I ended up enjoying, was The Last Samurai. Like, what a poignant telling. And it never did really well over here, but those of us that kind of experienced some of that understand that whole sequencing of, did he die a hero? Was it without purpose? What was it? It left more questions and had you thinking more. Whereas in the US, we're like, dang it, he should beat the bad guy and be like John Wayne, or he should die, but then his cause should win, or whatnot. And instead, the samurai are dead. He's there as an American kind of representing. There's the before the emperor. How does it all go? And it just, you walk out and you're like, well, wait, what? Like, what did I just see? And everybody's like, Rotten Tomatoes 2%, So I can see that.
I love that movie. That's a great movie.
So, all right, man. Well, since I'm going to make a jump here, figuring that you're anime, you're talking about 80s trash, and I started thinking about being in Japan, and Sega is huge there. So not so much the console, which I don't even know if they have consoles anymore, but I remember the original Sega. I remember the Genesis and those Dreamcast and whatnot. But in Japan today, you go and there's still arcades. You go there, you play games. Like, it's in their culture. Whereas in the 80s, man, I would go and play Pac-Man and Dig Dug and all these games and Centipede as a little kid, because I'm 5 or 6, I'm pumping my quarters in and just basically losing my life while these cool teenagers are just doing it on a quarter at the pizza shop and stuff. But I'm guessing you've got to be a gamer on some level.
No, the coolest thing in my room, by far, and this is like totally accidental. I got this as a kid. My uncle was in the military. He was in Germany. Sent this to me for Christmas one year. It's actually to my left, plugged into a CRT TV. I have a Sega CDX. First console I ever owned. Super rare. Not a lot of people know about it. It was mostly in Europe. They had some in the United States, but it's smaller in form factor. It can run on batteries, but it's a Sega CD and Sega Genesis combined into a single console. So no add-ons, no click-ins, none of that. It's just one little box. It's super cool. I've kept it in like perfect running condition. Still works great. Clean it out every year. I love it. And that kind of started the whole journey. To my right, I have a collection of lots of retro consoles, which I have maintained and keep and take apart and mod and do all the fun stuff with, because there's something about old video game hardware and the limitations they had that made the games better. Because when you have less stuff and you have less polygons and pixels and performing power, you have to get creative. You have to use your imagination. I think this is like back to the He-Man thing and the 80s trash. It's like there was a need for Nintendo and Sega to out-innovate each other with this such limited hardware that had to be somehow affordable that, you could put it in the living room of like an 8-year-old's house. And the games they created are so good. They're still fun. Like you could play them today. And you look at like the PlayStation 3, or I have a PlayStation 3 over there. 90% of those games are trash and they don't hold up. There's some good ones, but when you look at the classics, it's just mind-blowing how well they hold up and how good they are. I get excited about it because, one, it makes me kind of sad. We just don't get that kind of release anymore. There's not that level of innovation that's happening in gaming. But two, it's great that we can preserve these things and they seem to hold up incredibly well. And there's all these efforts to keep kids in the loop on playing old Mario and old Sonic and re-releases to show them the good old days when we had them.
Yeah, well, and it's crazy. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this time, but I did a stint at Apple, and it's interesting is Steve Jobs and those guys were like the original Atari programmers. They made a lot of those little cartridge games, and so much grew out of it. And the founder of Atari, was an original Apple investor. Like so much of what we have today has stemmed out of that. And I grew up playing a lot of those games, definitely the original NES console. Super Nintendo is about the time that I started pulling back because I noticed a shift in games, and I think it started with Myst. And Myst was the first game that I remember. It was a PC game that I wanted to beat my head against the desk so hard because it was like, go into the library and on the 400th shelf, find the 32nd book on the second page, and there's your clue. And it's like, you can't get that without a walkthrough. Like, gone was the magic of I could forever advance, I could warp around, I could go to worlds, but I could figure this out on my own. And then maybe I'd find an Easter egg or something. And if I really want to take my game to the next level, I could get like a Nintendo Power and I could get like that next level of something. But really, I watched a shift in gaming. So both of my kids game today, and they love Steam games. They're all in the Switches and everything. And I thought about, picking up a Switch myself. I said, it's been so long since I gamed and I loved it. But I was like, I missed the days of being able to just play forward. So I remember my last excited release, and this is so old, was like Nintendo Wii came out with Lost Levels for the original Super Marios. And I was like, look, you can play. And it was hard, but it was like forward movement. It was somewhere I could go, as opposed to now I watch them play all these games and I'm just like, I'm lost. I'm just like, they're amazing games. But I'm like, the intricacies and the role play, it's like living a movie. But to me, man, my brain doesn't fire that way. I don't find that relaxing in there.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of an interesting thing happening today where the prettier a game is and the nicer it looks, it's almost like 10 miles wide, 10 feet deep. Like they've just kind of over-rotated on making things look good and making sure that the gamer gets to see everything and they can waft over every pixel, that they forgot to make them fun. Mm-hmm. And it's a huge problem for me because I play to play. If I want to watch a movie, I'll watch a movie. If I want to read a book, I'll read a book. If I want to play a game, I want to play a game. I want a mechanical experience that's going to like either force me to think about something, solve a problem, overcome a dexteral challenge. And I think we lost a lot of that. Like if again, interestingly enough, I feel like the Eastern devs like Capcom, Nintendo, Square Enix, they're still innovating and still trying to create that classic game experience. But you look at a lot of the folks in our own country that are doing game dev, and it's miles wide, feet deep. Just, it's pretty. I know like they did a Last of Us TV show on HBO and I watched it and I was like, I'd rather watch the show than play the game because it's not interesting to play, like it's a good show. It's a great show. It's a cool story, but far more interesting as a show than just move through the corridor, shoot some zombies, watch a cutscene. Like that just doesn't do it for me.
I agree with you. And I almost wonder, and I don't want to bag on our education system, but when we look at it though, no, I mean like going to college for game design, like you have game designers. And I used to talk to youth all the time about this because they'd be like, oh, I want to do video games. And I'd be like, I think you need to spend more time in literature as an English major than you do the game design. No, I want to do this. Okay. writing the pretty screens, we have those people in the graphic arts and programming that can do that all. But where are our storyboard people? Where are our ability to do these things? And I think we lose that. And I think because we've disjointed them so much, like you said, they're pretty. And then I think the stories are complex, but I don't think it's playable. Like, it looks pretty, it's too complex. And I'm with you. I would rather figure out what happens to this character by seeing it rather than trying to figure out where am I clicking? Did I find that magic corridor? And then the annoyance of having to play the same sequencing over and over because you just can't find it. You're just like, forget it. I gave you my money. Oh, look, new Steam game. You know, it's like, I don't know. I can't be in that world. So gaming, good. We talked a little bit before. You have you and I talked before we came on here, but you too have a podcast. So I want to spend some time on that. So what are you podcasting about? Because I've got Rebel Devs. We're weird. We focus in on Veeam so we can get our bills paid a little bit. And then I can just totally, jam out on this stuff. So what's your podcast look like? What's it about? What are you doing?
So it's called Corporate Strategy, and that name is very tongue-in-cheek. It started off as sort of a therapy for my good buddy and I, my co-host. We both have been in the industry for 10 plus years. I've been a developer, a sales engineer, a sales architect, and now a marketer. He's been developer, product manager. He's working his way up to being CEO of the world. And like, we have just found that our journeys were so interesting. Like, hey, let's talk about it. And then what we found was the people who were listening to us talking about it were all super young in their careers, or like literally first year starting out. And they just had questions for us. So we kind of started off as therapy, and it has since turned into educational. And the whole vibe of our pod is we have this little community we've built out. People join, they ask us questions, and then we dedicate their questions to an episode. So we'll go off and figure out how to solve their problems for them, basically like free consulting, but generally larger. And it's become a really nice thing for us. Like it started off as like, what if we just did this? And now it's, how do we help people be better and create better workplaces and better environments? And it's very holistic, like how you can change your outlook and your worldview about your working situation, or how you fix it, how you create better culture and a better working environment for yourself. And by doing that, the people around you. And it's just a lot of fun. We are very sarcastic and we try to be very fun and keep it casual, just like this, but focused on the new generation that's coming into work today, that's finding it either difficult to get in or to kind of stay abreast of the situation.
So how do we backlink to you? Because I know the marketing people are going to listen to this and be like, get us some backlinks over there. So how do we find you over there?
We're everywhere. All you have to do is, if you go to any podcast vendor, just type in corporate strategy and you will find us like the bat signal.
Awesome.
Our website is corporatestrategy.biz, because I thought it was really clever. The biz stands for business.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome, man. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up for here. We've been jamming out. I think we got 2 good episodes here. Looping it back in, of course, we have Anthony Cusimano from ObjectFirst, who taught us all about Oobi. If you haven't checked them out, for real, Veemers, check them out. It's a great product. What I would say from a strategy side, of a guy that gets no money for doing this and bringing them on, we've been talking about ultra resilient storage, kicked off with Rick Vanover from Veeam. We've went ahead and talked to now ObjectFirst. As you look at it, have an open mind. You may not be ready for object storage yet, but I'm here to tell you, the sooner you adopt object storage, it's going to pay dividends later, because you are an early adopter in this, but you're at the right juncture that you're an early adopter, but your technology is where it needs to be. It's going to give you a robust feature set that you're going to want to get and use. And I don't think you're going to realize how valuable it is till you start using it and realizing what it can do. You're not going to be trapped into Linux repositories supporting. You're going to have a box that does great things. And I loved it. In our first episode, you really drove home. This is what you all do. This is where your focus is. It's not necessarily a cloud target. It's not necessarily something else. And who knows what it morphs into. I mean, all of our products always change over time. But right now, I have a Veeam box. I need to write it somewhere. I need it secure. I need it to expand. I need to be able to grow it. And I think that's what I would say I like the most about ObjectFirst. Whereas I talk to other people like Nutanix and folks, and while that's great, and they're like, this one box does it all. And you're like, yeah, but it's kind of like I grew up in the North. When we would look at all season tires, we're like, it kind of did everything. But like, if you put it in snow, you're in trouble. If you put it in mud, you're in trouble. But like, if the road is wet with snow, you're okay. Better than a regular tire. Whereas I think ObjectFirst, you're driving in, you're good at what you do, and it's where it needs to be. But in all fairness, I really should turn it back to you, Anthony. I think you should have the final say on ObjectFirst. So take us out with it, man.
Without repeating myself too much, I will just say again, the founders of Veeam looking to repeat what they did when they created that backup platform, this time for storage. It's purpose built. For 3+ years now, our development team has built something that only works for Veeam and is meant to make your experience with Veeam the best it could possibly be when it comes to your storage. It's ransomware proof. It's immutable out of the box, simple, secure, powerful storage, and it legitimately takes less than 15 minutes to set up. We always say, when you think about Veeam, think about ObjectFirst. I do recommend you check us out if you have any passing interest in making your on-prem backups as secure as humanly possible. We're here for you. Hit us up.
Couple off of that, if you need help setting it up, looking at your Veeam environment, check us out at differentdev.com. We can go ahead and solve all of your Veeam issues or help you prevent have issues. I think that's kind of the driver, is it's easier to prevent than get there, and we highly recommend ObjectFirst. So, Anthony, thank you for your time today, and everybody who's listening out there, we're going to play our little cool outro, which none of you seen, but normally we're all dancing behind the scenes because we're geeky, we're different, and we're different devs. So here for the Rebel Devs podcast, Tom May, enjoy and stay in trouble, as I like to say.
Whether you're a seasoned solutionist or just starting out, the Rebel Devs podcast is a must listen. So join us. Comment, share, and subscribe. Be part of the Rebel Devs.